Welcome to another video. This week, Debbie joined me, which is very, very nice. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you, Arna.
And do you want to explain what the topic is? And I guess that's also the reason why you are here.
I'd love to, yeah. Today we're going to talk a little bit about corporate worship. So, worshipping together as one body, not just as individuals, but with the joy that there is in coming together, enjoying being together, worshipping God.
Okay, Debbie, corporate worship. You already said there's individual worship. I guess that has its place. And yes, we do know the Bible says, especially Paul, for example, points out, go into your room, like when you fast, don't display for everyone and try to boast about what you're doing. But there is times for individual prayer and worship. There is this place. But the majority of the Bible talks about corporate worship. And we decided to talk about this today and what it means for us here at St. Peter's, how we can worship corporately when we come together as the body of Christ.
Yeah, we did, and it's something that's so important that actually we've missed. I think if the pandemic has showed us anything, it showed us actually how important that is. And yes, our individual worship is foundational and so important. But actually, we're meant to worship together. You know, Hebrews talks about don't give up meeting together because it's so important. It's so good for us, and there's a real joy, I think, in coming together and seeing all of our church family gathered, and the joy that we all have in worshipping God together, and that builds us up and fuels us for going back into our scattered lives when we leave the building, we leave the gathering, and we're carrying on with life because we're fueled up. We've had that experience where we're not alone in our worship, because sometimes, you know, depending on what setting we find ourselves in, we might be the only one in our household or our school or our work environment. We might be the only one who loves Jesus, but when we meet together as church, we're not alone. Everyone else is also loving Jesus, is worshipping Jesus, and that's so encouraging, isn't it? It's a real joy.
Yeah. And just brings to mind when Jesus said, where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am. Not saying that Jesus is not with us wherever we go by His Spirit, but I do believe that there's something different, more powerful when we come together as the body.
And it talks about, you know, that God dwells in the praises of His people, and we can talk about what exactly that might mean, but I think there is a sense when we're all together, praising God together, that yes, He's always with us even when we're scattered, but we're more conscious, aren't we, often of the fact that He is with us when we're praising Him together.
Yeah. And I think one reason why we're doing this together also is our differences. We are a body for a good reason. We are different. The Bible brings this picture of actually the body. Some people like the ear, the foot, the toe, the hand. Like, we have our differences, and like we both have our differences and different perspectives, experiences, so we can combine our knowledge, our experiences, and our passion, and even our spirituality, the way we worship.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the, for me, it's one of the major reasons and one of the beauties why we can come together. Because if it's just me, it's a very, very limited picture of God.
Yeah.
It's a very narrow idea of worship and practice of worship. But once we come together and learn from each other, then there are different ways of worshipping, not just in music. We can argue about music, we can have proper discussions and even separate because we don't like the type of music or the type of prayer we have, which is also fine because we have different denominations. But still we can learn from each other in that.
Yeah, we can, and we're going through our series on spiritual gifts at the moment, aren't we? And we know that we're all given gifts, and we're not all given the same ones. We're all given different things, but it's for the building up of the body. So we need all the things. We need all the perspectives. We need all the personalities. We need all the spiritual gifts to help us grow together and worship God and serve our community together. And you know, your part's important, my part's important, all of our parts are important. You know, the hand can't say to the foot, "Oh, you're not important." The eyeball can't say to the kidney, "Oh, I don't need you." we've all got to be there, not because it's all about me, but actually all the bits that we all bring make the complete picture.
Exactly. I mentioned that in one of the earlier videos, that we are important to bring our gifts and our knowledge of God, our experiences, to basically complete the picture. Whether we as a local church won't complete the picture, as human race, as humankind, as all of creation, complete the picture. That's one aspect, but I think also if we come together, I can learn. It's not just about what I bring, but about what I receive.
Yeah.
One of my experiences in gathered worship is, for example, there's so many things that I can't relate to.
Right.
Some traditions or new things that don't sit quite well with me, but because I know that someone else is worshipping in that way, it broadens my perspective and my experience of who God is. So I also gain from that, not just because what I bring, but what I receive. And that, again, makes it so much better.
Yeah, and that's the joy and the challenge, isn't it, of the church and corporate worship. And even maybe more so at the moment, we have one gathering here at St. Peter's, really, which is our Sunday morning. And that's for everyone, and that's wonderful. But also, you know, everyone includes everyone in our church, every preference, every age group, and we're trying to do something for all of us. So the likelihood is that no single person will like everything or will relate to everything that happens within that. But yet we go through it because we know that all these different elements are helping different people, hopefully, to engage with God. And we're church family, aren't we? So we don't get to pick who's in our family. We don't get to pick who's in our church family, but we get to be together and we get to honour one another and sometimes lay down our own preferences and worship God together through all these different forms, different songs, different mediums.
In the next couple of weeks, we will slightly change the direction of our teachings, whereas the first 7 parts, I think, 7 parts were much more the biblical teaching on worship, what really the theory of worship is. We want to switch game now and talk more about the practical side for us here at St. Peter's. So worship team, this is really important for all of us. That's why we started with the corporate worship idea. Because we as team are not called worship team because we are the worshippers, but because our service is to lead the congregation, the church, into a place of worship. So our role in this is not to make us comfortable or have our worship experience, but we are serving the church. We're serving the people. We will elaborate on that in different videos because I think there's so much to talk about. But this is the first step for us as a whole team. Corporate worship is something that we establish. It's not where we mainly gain or where we have our time, but it's something that we want to give to the whole congregation. I guess for picking music, for example, picking the right songs, that's really important because we want to serve them. It's not about my preferences, first and foremost, but about what does St. Peter sound like. And for the visuals, we can be creative and can do so many things, but if we're not really serving the purpose, which is a worshipping church, a church that is passionate about worship, then we are missing the goal.
Yeah.
So this is why we're doing this video today for our team, because we want to understand corporate worship is what we do.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's such an honor, isn't it? We're in when we're in that position of leading. We're not primarily having our own worship experience. We need to have that, but when we're up front, in front of the church, our primary responsibility is helping other people into that, and it's such a privilege and such an honor, I think, to for those of us who are on worship team and are at the front. One of the amazing things about it is where we're stood, we get to see the whole congregation, and I think it's such a privilege and such a joy to be there and to be able to see people worshipping God. Often when I'm there, I feel like, well, I'm leading worship, but actually I feel like I'm being led way more than I'm leading, because I'm looking, I can see people, joyfully and exuberantly praising God, or I can see that couple who I know are having a horrendous time, and you can see the faith and the joy on their faces as they engage with worship, and that's where we're there to help people come into that and to help people offer their worship to God, and it's a real privilege, and we want to serve that as well as we can in all the practical ways that we'll talk about over the next few weeks.
Oh, I can relate to that. Because actually, I don't really like being on a stage. I don't like to be in the spotlight. But that's the beauty of being on the stage. You see the people, how
front row seat.
It's like, God is so good, because you can see how God is active in people's lives. Such a beauty.
Absolutely.
That reminds me of something that Paul says when it comes to music and worship. Music is not necessarily the moment where we are engaged with God in this very intimate sense, although because of the effects of music, it's a very intimate moment. But Paul says, encourage each other with songs of praise and hymns and spiritual songs. So the dimension is horizontal lots of the time.
Yeah.
And if we look at the many songs and the lyrics, they actually speak about us. Like, we believe in a God. It doesn't make sense to have eyes closed and hands raised as if we were talking to God, which we obviously do in some sense, but we're addressing each other.
Right.
We're encouraging each other in most of our worship songs. Even the hymns, they are rich in theology, and the purpose was to teach theology, to teach faith, and actually do what Paul says, encourage each other in that and build our faith.
Yeah.
There are songs where eyes closed and hands raised is spot on, but many times it's much more, we as a church, we need each other.
Yeah.
And when we're in this together, we're so much stronger. So perhaps we can reflect on some, maybe our favorite songs this week, and just think about what is actually the meaning behind the song. Who's the song addressing? What is it meant to do in our faith? Is it mainly worship like vertically, or is there a horizontal aspect to it?
Yeah, and it's the interplay of those two elements is at work more often than we think. Like the passage you referred to is, there's a couple of Ephesians and Colossians, isn't there? But he says, sing to one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. But right after that, he says, sing to the Lord, making music and melody in your heart to the Lord. So we're doing those two things. And even in our songs, on Sunday we sang Great Things, which begins, come let us worship our King, come let us. So we're singing that to one another, encouraging one another, come to worship. Then we get to the chorus and it's, O hero of heaven, you conquer the grave, you free the captives, you break the chains. We're now singing to God together. And so we're doing these two things. So yes, the vertical is so important. That ultimately is why we're here, is because we want to connect with God. But what's different about doing that in our bedroom and doing it when we're gathered? It's that we get to do it together, and that is such a joy. So we want to not have our eyes closed to the point where we're unaware of our brothers and sisters around us,
Mm.
and the joy that it is that we're all worshipping God together, and we're kind of encouraging each other
Yeah.
into that. So yeah, I think it's good to just reflect on, who is the song actually talking to? Am I singing this to God or to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're singing, bless the Lord, oh my soul, come on,
yeah.
my soul,
Mhm.
or come let us worship.
Yeah.
We're doing it together. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's good to think through
Yeah.
what we're actually singing.
And everything has its place in worship. The Psalms are full of this, and
Yeah.
the perspective changes throughout the song many times.
Yeah, even verse to verse, it's flipping.
Mhm.
Like God, me.
Yeah,
you.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes even within a sentence, like because we're whole beings.
Yeah.
We're not compartmentalized into this is my talk. This is with relations with other people. We're one,
Yeah.
and our relationship, like love the God, your neighbor as yourself. It's always these three relational aspects, and all three have their place in worship in our songs, and we find that throughout the Bible. And so let's be intentional about that in our gathered worship, because that's the point of gathered worship.
And especially now that we can again. Now that we're coming back to church. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy
Yes.
being together.
Amazing.
Great.
I think we're doing a video next week.
Yep.
Do you want to say one sentence and then finish this?
Yes, we have discussed the next 3 topics. So the next one that is coming up, I think, is going to be related to our practical preparation.
Yes.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that, how we can come prepared to lead God's
Yeah.
people in worship.
And also how it can take pressure from us
Yeah.
and release us into freedom and space of creativity and make room for God to work.
Absolutely.
So, see you next week.